Well, welcome everyone to our event, My Life, My Business. Wish I was here. And, for Shanaz and I today, we plan to be here. We want to be fully engaged. And last week, Shanaz took us through a talk on powerful relationships equaling powerful partnerships. And I was really just reflecting on that and thinking, well, how does one build on such a wonderful talk? And yes, I'll come to that. And I was just thinking about these sort of how do you know you in high quality relationships from just what happens in your thought life? How energetically are you showing up? And I just, there's a few things basically that you can use to just monitor this, assess this for yourself. But if broadly speaking, if this is your sort of default thought pattern, you are extracting the maximum from your relationships. And I guess it will inform you that it's actually a quality relationship. So just broadly speaking, is that you think about others as really a part of yourself. You believe that the experience with others is the opportunity. The sense of connection with everyone leads to a we always win perspective, which means that basically the lens through which you look at life is that everything that happens has purpose and value. You also enjoying a permanent sense of pleasure, satisfaction, and joy. And you have the ability to always create power from partnership. You are calm, you are unflappable, and inspire greatness in others. And so that just gives you a little bit of a summary from my perspective in terms of how you find yourself in a quality relationship. So the aspect that I'd like to build on, Shanaz made the statement that resilient people have high quality relationships. And it was quite interesting. I'm not sure if I captured it in that way, or that high quality relationships develop resilience in people. But I just wanted to touch a little bit on resilience and what is resilience all about. And we want to keep it obviously as simple as possible and not espouse rocket science this afternoon. So I consulted one of the books on resilience, and by the author Mark McGuinness, and his byline is Facing Down Rejection and Criticism on the Road to Success. He defines resilience as the ability to keep moving forward even when your inner voice is trying to stop you. So I want to take us through some of the things that he says in his book. And he comes from this perspective. He says, to make your dreams come true, you need to be comfortable with moving past your fears. And this seems to be quite a recurring theme in everything that we've been talking about. Specifically during this event since November 2021. Now, most of us have big dreams when we are young. We really, without restriction, allow ourselves just to, with our imagination, fully engage, we dream big. However, we give up on these early dreams because the bigger the dream, the bigger the fear of taking the leap required to make it a reality. So there's a lot there that speaks of the unknown and fear of the unknown. But for example, if you wanted to be an inspirational leader like a Nelson Mandela, for instance, and as a young person, and as you grow up, you start realizing what it would take to be a leader such as Nelson Mandela. amongst other things. But one of the things that you now identified that requires public contact and public speaking. So you now know that you have such a healthy fear of speaking in front of crowds and of people, and because of that one singular thing, you give up on your dream. And here's the remedy that is offered by Mark McGuinness, and he says, look, picture yourself taking the steps to make the dream come true. And when you do this well, that natural fear emerges as you picture it. The key is actually embrace the fear. Don't avoid it, but sit with it and accept it. Now, I don't know how natural that is, but I know it is a challenge. But then you imagine yourself working through the fear and addressing the crowd, and afterwards receiving a resounding round of applause. If going according to the example that you want to be a leader like Nelson Mandela. But as you picture yourself finishing your goal, you will feel a surge of positive energy that will keep you on the path to your dream. Ensure that your dream is something that you are truly passionate about. And it makes the example that there are few motivations as potent and as satisfying as helping others. Whatever it is, it must be a dream that you hold very dear, because you will face rejection, for sure. And it is your passion that, when it is strong, that is the fuel that will keep you going. There is no sense in taking rejection as a sign of failure when it's actually a normal part of the journey. So persevere. Despite the rejection that you face or the rejection that you anticipate. It is the key to reaching your dreams. Perseverance. And as we know, perseverance produces character, and character, hope. Hope that you will realize your dream. Now, to get closer to your dreams, overcome your fears and keep challenging yourself. So what this is expose yourself repeatedly to the source of your. Now, for some of you listening to you, is like, no way, Jacques, I am not going to do it at all. But there's this process called desensitization, and I'm sure this is such a technical term, and probably Shanaz is quite aware of it. But through this process of desensitization, that means is producing a level of familiarity with your fear, right? When you face it, when you look it in the eye, you can overcome the emotion associated with that fear. And he uses this example where he says, even even when you stand there and you, for example, have a fear of heights. Now, once again, maybe it's not the best example, but rather than working hard to avoid the heights, expose yourself to that feeling, become familiar with that feeling. Little by little, venture out onto the ledge, look down, make sure you're safe, of course, and all those things, but become familiar with how you feel when you feel vulnerable, like that. And the longer you do it, that familiarity allows you to become desensitized. Now, another aspect of this topic of resilience speaks about to be a better self-critic. Distance yourself from your work so that you can take a fresh perspective. So, and then Leonardo da Vinci recommended this, where he would set up a mirror so that he could look at a reflection of his latest painting. This allowed him to gain a new perspective of his painting, because he would see the reverse image of his painting. And this allowed him to be objective and judge a painting as though he was seeing it for the first time. Obviously, in the context of being alone, that's what you would do. But to gain multiple perspectives, this is what you would get when you are connected in very strong, high quality relationships. The perspectives of the people around you allow you to distance yourself from whatever it is you do. And we need to be quite happy and excited to gain fresh perspectives through the eyes of others. You know, your inner critic voice, and I deal with a tool that calls that inner critic the gremlin voice. If you harness it, that inner critic voice can actually work with you rather than against you. Now, normally that inner critic voice normally tells us that we're never good enough. What we are doing is not good enough. So as part of the resilience is to make your inner critic your great friend and ally. You know he or she or it is going to speak up. But you're going to use your inner critic to keep working and reworking until you've reached the best possible outcome. Now, one of the techniques to really make that critic your friend is to give it a name. Just don't call that gremlin Satan or devil or demon. Give it a name, like a normal, like Frank or Susie or whatever that is. So you can speak to Frank or Susie, and remember, it's not some external voice, it's your own voice speaking to you. So give it a name, personalize it, and have a debate. When the voice comes up, you say to your gremlin voice, listen, I know you worry that I'm going to fail. I haven't put my plan yet. How about me executing the plan first, then you give me feedback? So you drown out the fear, the feeling of less than, that you're not good enough, by having a conversation, by actually placing value on that voice rather than allowing the voice to devalue you. So, reaching your dreams require a healthy attitude towards success. Now, we've spoken about this in so many different ways. It's amazing that whenever the topic changes, there seems to be, broadly speaking, the same kinds of ingredients to achieving goals in life, achieving what it is you set out to achieve, whatever that destination is. Now, a healthy attitude towards success is defined in this book in this way, is as the act of achieving something great, whether it's inspirational art, inventing a life-changing product or service, or empowering people to be better. And especially that last one is when you work with people, that's serotonin rush, oxytocin, whatever the case might be with the connectedness neurotransmitter. It is the fuel that keeps you going. Life is not about running a race that is over within 10 seconds. It's not a 100-meter sprint. It's a marathon. So when you have this perspective on success, you can keep yourself on the right path. Anyone can pursue their dreams. And guess what? Once again, we start talking about experiment to expand your confidence. The only quality necessary to go after the dream, any dream, is really the willingness to work hard. It's got nothing to do with your background, how you were born, how you've been raised, what kind of gene pool you come from. And he makes this statement. It's a bold statement, but the only quality necessary to go after your dream is the willingness to work hard. When you start expanding your ideas about what's possible, your confidence will also grow. So it's really exploring the art of the possible and not being demotivated by the drain of the impossible. So start by experimenting. And when you start by experimenting, you expand your ideas, you expand your options. So, finally, and this is sort of short, sharp, and sweep, I never deliver on this, but today I am, is resilience. And I'm going to kind of recap with this. Resilience is not an elusive quality that some people have and others lack. It's a practice that you can build by refusing to give up, despite the rejection and criticism you encounter. By cultivating it, you can discover your true passion and pursue it, even when the odds are stacked against you. Always remember, resilience does not develop in a vacuum or in isolation. It is nurtured in an environment of high quality relationships. A friend of mine spoke about resilience once at a function, and she spoke about resilience as your bounce back ability. And yes, all of this within the context of the kinds of high quality relationships. Remember, that don't drain you, but that groom you in one sense and also grow you in another sense. So, yeah, that is me.
Hi, Jacques. I think that was really good. I think in terms of the work that I do, even when you started to talk about desensitization, it can be used in so many different contexts, and particularly when people are experiencing fears. In the work that I do, a lot of people come to me with their fears, and or the fears is actually the thing that drives them and is preventing them from achieving their dreams and their goals. When we start to unpack it, so it's so true in terms of what the author says about sitting with the fear and working through it.
And it's one of the, and I've become aware of this. It's one of the very very difficult things to do is to sit in it, because I think the fight or flight response, normally the flight response, or it's the freeze mode that kicks in when we're in that state. But to sit in it and to embrace it, I tell you what, is literally, as I was doing all of this, and I thought, you know what, practically speaking, it's a tall order. And here's the thing, is that if you isolate it and alone, it just grows. It becomes a massive giant. But even if you would make an appointment to come see you, Shanaz, let's talk through this. Let's get perspective. Let me bounce it let me use you as a sounding board and talk me through this. I'm seeing all of this in this manner. It is about engaging with somebody else that reduces that fear, but also knowing that you are not alone in that context. But many times when we do anything, whether it's strategy planning, action planning, one of the key things that we always have to take into consideration is the internal barrier to success. And fear is literally one of the most important that one has to talk through, and to not avoid it, to accept that it's there now. We don't always want to admit that we are fearful, but I do think maybe that's the start. I am fearful. Those three words. I am fearful. And Can I talk to somebody about it? Is it possible for me to overcome it? But to know that in that moment, turning around, facing it, dealing with it, and look, and I must admit there, this is when you're still in control of who you are, in control of your thought patterns, etc. You get to a point, obviously, when you absolutely need help, when maybe there's now clinical requirements to help you beyond where you are. But as long as you are in a situational place and you are still in control of thoughts, decisions, thinking through what sits behind those emotions that you are experiencing, you can practice some form of self mastery in this case. Um, so, you know, but I must say the context for me is profound. Is that resilience? Practicing the art of resilience cannot happen without people around you that you trust, that you look up to, and those people kind of look after you, encourage you, share in your dreams, and really want you to succeed in an environment like that.
I was going to say absolutely. Any work that we've done with resilience and resilience theories always involve the idea that it has to be done in relationship, even with children. You don't. There are some people that, in a sense, aren't resilient, but what we often discovered, and in my own research, that has happened where they haven't had those support systems around them. So having those relationships, even if it's not a long term, consistent one, but having a relationship where someone can support you with a particular idea or through a particular situation is essential for developing that resilience. So, that sort of key work with young people who, in high risk areas and high risk contexts is to provide that kind of support.
Because when you consider the fruit of it all, that never say die attitude. No, we often think that once we have a dream and we're pursuing the dream, and and even if it's, and we know that that dream arose from a particular calling on your life, and you know it's a calling, you cannot assume that life is going to treat you absolutely kindly. There will be no ups and downs, and it will be smooth sailing. Like there'll be some sort of a vacuum, no headwinds as you pursue your calling. We know that's not true. That attitude that keeps going regardless. And the earlier thing that I kind of shared in terms of one of the ingredients is really being passionate about what it is you're pursuing. It's a strong, emotion that's tied to the conviction that you're on the right path. Yes, there are stumbling blocks along it. There are all kinds of obstacles along the way, external ones, but at the same time, huge internal ones. And as we just discussed, fear being one of them. But also, that Kremlin voice that says, "Oh, but you're not good enough." And when you get better at managing your gremlin voice, it's quite interesting. Is that that gremlin will wait for the moment when you do fail, and then begin to rub your nose in it, your face in it, and to say, "See, I told you so. You should never have tried to do this." Because why are you doing? You just want to be better than others, and having the resilience and the never say die attitude is to be able to identify that voice, that is saying all of this, and to really resist it and to say, but it's not true. It's not the truth. Don't accept it as a truth, and don't be discouraged by those voices. And your own voice, actually, more than anything else. Um, so yes, I don't know what is your experience with this inner critic, Shanaz.
Well, you're actually touching on an area of work that I do actually. It's sort of it's narrative therapy or narrative practice, and they talk about externalizing conversations. And so in other words, the gremlin voice, we identify that we how we'd work with adults is to absolutely name it, and have a conversation with it. So we talk about externalizing it so that you are not the problem, that the problem is the problem. And so you engage with it as if it's a situation that is outside of yourself. And you like what I'll try to do is get the adult to talk about when did, if they've named it, so they could name a fear. And it could be gremlin. So how long has gremlin been around? What does gremlin tell you to do? So it's in the third, like an external person. And we'll start to kind of get the history of gremlin, and then decide what do you think could be the future of gremlin. Do we still want gremlin around? And so that would be the idea of externalizing those fears, but naming it in a way that the person isn't overwhelmed by it themselves, realizing that that's not necessarily who I am. And the other thing is about that there are times that gremlin doesn't win. So when are the times that gremlin doesn't win?
Mm, mm,
And then
that
kind
is
of
so
kind
good.
of addressing it, yeah, so addressing it in that way, and focusing, then trying to get them to think about the times that gremlin doesn't win, because obviously gremlin doesn't win 24/7. So
Yeah.
can we isolate the times when gremlin isn't winning?
See, I'm not talking because I'm just letting that soak in because it's so practical. Yet, um, once one grasps the concept, you can apply it. Um,
Yeah. And so it's also about kind of what we kind of call it in a sense is getting the history of that issue in our life, and then getting perspective that without realizing it, there's also what I would call a counter story or an alternative story, when actually there are certain days that gremlin doesn't win. So what am I doing on the day that gremlin doesn't win? What is the conversation in my mind that I'm
yeah.
having on the day that gremlin doesn't win? Or was there a particular situation that led to gremlin not winning on that day? Otherwise, what happens is we think that he wins all the time, but as you said, that's not necessarily the truth.
It feels like there's a sequel coming for this particular
Yeah, I
topic.
can,
What do
I
you
can,
think?
I can do that. I can do that next week and talk about it's narrative practice, and it's really
Yes.
been it's used very successfully, in a number of different contexts. So I can share some ideas and actually practical tools um, for people to kind of use it in a way to help them address some of the um, issues that they are struggling with.
Oh,
Yeah, so I'll do that.
brilliant.
I'll do that next week.
Okay,
Yeah.
so on that note, thank you, Shanaz. Thank you for being present. Thank you, Julia, for always being present with us throughout our conversations. And for those of you who are listening to either the playback or the edited YouTube podcast that we upload, please be encouraged. Take back your life. bounce back with a vengeance. So, on that note, goodbye for now. We'll chat to you next week again. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Jacques. That was excellent. Thank you, Julia.
Okay, bye bye.